Page has to catch his 6 o'clock flight out of New York to make it home to Chicago the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. It is only a 2-hour flight from wheels up to wheels down. That is all he needs to do. Although he sits in the boardroom of his office in Manhattan, waiting while the boss drones on and on, he looks at his watch. He needs to get to the airport to catch a flight at 6 o'clock. He's promised his wife he will be home that evening. He wants to tuck his kids into bed, and surely there are last-minute details to take care of before the family all arrives on Thursday morning. What he needs to do is leave the meeting and catch a cab at 4:30 in Manhattan, make it all the way out to the airport, go through security, and arrive at his gate for a 6 o'clock flight. It is a monumental achievement, but he made it. He got to the gate with a few minutes to spare. They take off, the wheels are up, and in mid-flight, a voice comes over the speaker making this announcement. The flight is being rerouted to Wichita because there's a snowstorm preventing them from landing in Chicago at O'Hare Airport. He now is sitting with all the other passengers in the Wichita airport. Many of them have been bumped from their flights, and they watch in stunned disappointment as the flight board goes from delayed to canceled, 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 canceled. They all get in line to try to find a hotel room because they are snowed in Wichita. He finds out he cannot rebook. He is stuck. He cannot kiss his kids goodnight, and he won't make good on the promises to his wife. The kids are understandably upset, and the wife is disappointed and worried. But Neil, more than anything, is just dejected by the whole experience. He was once just a 2-hour flight from home, for being home for the holidays with his family. And now he's more than a 12-hour drive away from home. This, of course, describes the opening to one of my favorite all-time movies, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, starring Steve Martin as Neil Page and John Candy as the laughable Dill Griffith. And we can all relate to Neil. He just wants to get home. And yet he is delayed and rerouted, and the train actually breaks down on the tracks, and he has to drag his trunk all the way to the highway. They get on a bus, and then they get to St. Louis, and he gets a rental car. And lo and behold, the rental car catches on fire in the middle of the highway, and there are no hotels in these crowded cities as he makes the most circuitous route from Wichita, Kansas, to Chicago with an annoying travel companion, Dill Griffith, a shower curtain ring salesman. It seems the closer he should be getting to his destination, the farther off he finds himself. He is in a near constant state of almost arriving, but never yet making it to the destination. You can see his temper flaring and his blood pressure shooting up as he is questioning, how long will this take? Waiting, being on a journey, but not quite making it to your destination. Welcome to Advent, my friends. That is what it's all about. Advent means simultaneously coming and arriving. We can be both coming and shouting at the same time. Jesus has come, Jesus is coming, and Jesus will come again. But what is the prevailing question? How long? How long? How long, O Lord, the prophet Habakkuk cries out. In the first part of our scripture reading, we are presented with a lament. And the Bible contains many laments. You can find them in the book of the prophets, in a few of our Psalms, and we have an entire book devoted to them that is often overlooked. It's called Lamentations. It is appropriate for humans to lament. Perhaps we overlook that need because we attempt to sanitize our speech before God. But the ancients recognized the need for it. They spoke to God in ways that showed they did not care to hold back. They expressed their disappointment, their anger, their shock, and their confusion. And they questioned God directly. They had no qualms about asking God, why? Why has this happened? Why has this happened to me? And how long? As in, how long must we endure such things? Lament is not the absence of faith. That, my friends, is despair. Lament is an act of faith because we are going directly to God with our concerns. And it shows that our faith is alive. It might be a little perplexed or we might be hurting, but our faith is alive. Particular to Habakkuk, he is prophesying to the southern kingdom of Judah. The northern kingdom has already fallen to the Assyrians, and that was bad enough. But now the Babylonians, which Habakkuk calls the Chaldeans, they are coming after Judah. And he knows that they're going to ransack the city, they're going to destroy the temple, and they are going to scatter the Israelites throughout foreign lands. And this prophet cries out to God and asks, how long must we endure violence and destruction? Where is the justice in all of this? How long, Lord, must this go on? And God's answer comes to Habakkuk in an oracle or a vision. God tells him to write down his message plainly on tablets in a discernible way so that the runner who is delivering the message will be able to read it and give it to the people throughout the kingdom. He tells Habakkuk to wait, but in waiting to know that they are not alone, that justice will prevail, even though it seems like the wicked are getting ahead, and even though it seems that destruction is ruling the day, justice will happen. He tells Habakkuk to get to a watchtower. And when I read this, I immediately thought of that stone tower in a Lapa farm. And I've wondered just how far you could see if you were up there on that tower. I've wondered if from that watchtower, what could be seen beyond the fields and the animals and the traffic and the creek going by. And so now imagine that you are like Habakkuk up on a watchtower, but all you see is destruction and violence. You probably could imagine that, because sometimes it seems like our lives are that way, doesn't it? In fact, we have seen all the destruction that's going on, or that had gone on, with the fires in California. Those who had to flee said it was like being in the pit of hell, surrounded by flames everywhere they turned. There were so many homes destroyed and lives lost. Many felt entirely helpless helpless to those forces of wind and flame. And then, after they got the fire under control, the rains came. And it wasn't just enough rains to extinguish the fires, it was more than they needed. And so now they're experiencing mudslides and flooding. How long, the residents of California must be asking. And violence. I preach on violence inflicted on humans by humans far more than we should ever have to. I have said it before, and I state it clearly now, that our country has a problem with violence. When Risa, our secretary, asked me what our prayer focus will be at the beginning of the week, I have honestly asked her to hold off. I say, let's wait and see what happens. Isn't that a sad commentary on our lives? That is because so often our national conversation will change from the time we publish our newsletter on Monday until Wednesday when we publish our bulletin. Far too often we will need to address, as people of faith, another workplace shooting, or even more devastating, a shooting at a school. How long, Lord? When will your real justice prevail? Because we're not getting it right down here, are we? And a recent report showed that out of 87,000 women killed worldwide, 58% of them were killed by intimate partners. Many of them, that was not their first incidence of abuse, but they had sustained violent abuse over a long period of time. We, like Habakkuk, must question the human justice system that allows this sort of thing to go on. How long, Lord? How long must we endure this? And from his watch place, he can see that the fig tree does not blossom. There is no fruit on the vines, though the produce of olives fail, and the fields yield no fruit. The flock is cut off from the fold, and there are no herds in the stalls. These are tough words for us to hear, isn't it? Because many of you work the land, and you know that if the fields aren't producing, or if there are no animals out there, that we will find ourselves in a sad state of affairs. And we must concern ourselves as human beings living on a common planet, the state that we find ourselves in. And I think a lament is definitely in order, because we have had prophets tell us for decades that we needed to take climate change seriously. But like so many, we have failed to heed their words. One voice I listen to is Dr. Leah Shade, the eco-preacher, a professor at Lexington Theological Seminary, and a publisher of she is a published author of several books on the topic. She was featured in an op-ed in Thursday Lexington's Herald Leader. She stated, "The latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warns that humanity has just over 10 years to get global warming under control before the cascade of disastrous impacts overwhelms our capacity to adapt." 10 years to get it together. That affects every single person sitting here in this sanctuary. And if you don't think you're going to be here in 10 years, well, I bet your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren will be. And so in this instance, when we cry out, "How long, Lord, will we deal with these negative effects of our climate?" we might very well have an answer. 10 years. 10 years to get our collective acts together. If you don't think this is an issue for the church, I urge you to reconsider. This is a moral crisis. If we were to write a message to deliver it clearly to those who will listen to us about the state of the environment, I wonder what the people of faith in this congregation would say. Could we offer them hope? Could we offer them more than just the question, how long, Lord? And yet, from that same vantage point, Habakkuk can also see God's glory. God's glory covers the heavens and it extends to the earth. And yet, although all of this is happening around us, we can still sing God's praises. We know that there is violence, but the faithful can continue to live as moral creatures striving for good. And although it might seem that some are bent on destroying the creation, we recognize our faithfulness and our duties to live in sustainable ways. We can be the example of how to show others how we can live in God's shalom, that God's beautiful planet can exist for many more years and provide abundant life for future generations. Although there is destruction and natural and human-made violence, God is still with us. We heard Habakkuk's lament of what was wrong in his world. And I have identified some that I think affects all of us. And I bet you have a few more, some personal places of deep darkness in your life. While we contemplate the darkness, let us not do so out of hopelessness, but out of a sense that it is sometimes while we dwell in the land of darkness that we learn to truly appreciate the light. In her book, Learning to Walk in the Dark, Barbara Brown Taylor writes, I have learned things in the dark that I never could have learned in light. Things that have saved my life over and over again, so that there is only one real logical conclusion. We need darkness as much as we need light. Did you hear that? Let me repeat it. We need the darkness as much as we need the light. I wonder what you have learned in the dark that you might not have learned otherwise. We need that darkness. That is why we gather during Advent. That is why we light candles and we watch them flicker in the darkness. We can even anticipate our Christmas Eve service when we will turn out all the lights, and there will be no light coming in from outside through these beautiful stained glass windows. And all we will have before us will be the light of the Advent wreath, with the freshly lit Christ candle in the middle. And from that, we will pass that light, one to another, and we will share it until it envelops this entire dark space with the light of hope, the light of Christ. We can see things afresh when we enjoy the light of Christ. We enter into the season when we wait for Emmanuel, God with us. But let us not also fail to see all the ways that God is already with us. All the way God continues to illumine the world with light. I heard Advent described this week as history, mystery, and majesty. Christ has come. Christ came in history. It happened. It was an event. Christ is ways that we do not always understand and sometimes we don't recognize. And Christ will reign again in glory. But right now, my friends, we are caught in the in-between time. We are between the history and the majesty, in a state of waiting for God's continual coming and not yet arriving. And we cry out, "How much longer, God?" And God comforts the people by saying, "Go up to a high mountain where you can gain fresh perspective. Continue living in my ways, and I will deliver you, my people." It is both already happening and not yet complete. Like Neil Page, we seem like we will never arrive at the destination of peace for our planet. But as we light this one candle of hope, I want you to be confident in the fact that it is coming. One day, we will safely arrive at home. But it's going to take us a while. We might not always understand the ways we are routed or why we are taken down that particular path. We certainly won't understand the lessons immediately, especially those that we have to learn in the dark spaces. And no one likes to wait in the dark, especially not alone. But it's easier when you have the mystery of presence, of God with us. And so I wonder with you, can we wait? But can we wait together just a little while longer?